Good morning. It's Sunday morning. I hope you're getting ready for church. You need to go to church. Forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, as the custom of some is, and all the more as you see that day approaching. And that day, of course, is the rapture. Um, very soon, we'll be with the Lord. Um, there's always stuff to do. And I've been sitting here thinking, well, I have trouble getting it all done. And I'm thinking, you know what? I don't really have that much more to do than I ever did. As a matter of fact, at this age, I have less to do than I ever did before, as far as duties, things that I have to get done, tasks. But it just takes me a lot longer to do them. Do you have that problem? Well, we finished up chapter 7 of Isaiah yesterday, and this will be another one of those shorter programs because it took me a little longer to get myself together this morning, ready to go to church. Chapter 8, we move into an extension, or an expansion rather, of the prophecy that Isaiah made in chapter 7 about the coming invasion of the northern kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians, and how this would affect Judah, and how one day Judah would suffer the same fate. Although he doesn't specifically say it in this chapter, but it would be at the hands of Babylon. Now, in verse 1 of chapter 8, moreover the Lord said unto me, take thee a great roll, and write in it with a man's pen concerning Maher Shalal Hashbaz. What's a mouthful in it? And what that means is haste ye to the spoil, like hurry up and conquer, get it over with. Take thee a great roll, and write in it a man's pen concerning Maher Shalal Hashbaz. And I took unto me faithful witnesses to record Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah. Now, what's he doing here? He's writing this down about Maher Shalal Hashbaz. No, that's really his name. It means hasten to the spoil. Hasten ye, hasten to the spoil. What is happening here is God has given him this prophecy that about this Maher Shalal Hashbaz, and so he writes it down, but he takes witnesses to watch him write it down, a priest and a scribe, and then they'll lay the paper aside to see if it comes true. Sometimes I will write things down that I'm just sure are going to happen, and I will give them to Dr. Adrian. And then when the event was supposed to have come to pass, he will show me whether I was right or wrong. And of the things we've written down, I'm always right. Although in some instances, I think it's a matter of deduction instead of prophecy. um, But this is a prophecy. So he writes this down, and he has witnesses, and they record it so that when it happens, that they will know that it was a true prophecy. And verse 3, and so I went in unto the prophetess. That's his wife. That's Mrs. Isaiah. And she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord to me, call his name again, Maher Shalal Hashbaz. Hasten ye to the spoil. Now that's a big, good morning, Charles. God bless you. That's a big name for a little kid, right? A newborn Maher Shalal Hashbaz. Hasten ye to the spoil. So he writes a prophecy about this name. He has a kid and a son, and he names him Maher Shalal Hashbaz. Hasten ye to the spoil. And here's why. This is God talking to Isaiah. For before the child have knowledge to cry, my father and my mother, before he's able to talk, before he's even able to jibber jabber, my, da, mine. I think that's the first word a kid learns, isn't it? Mine. It shows the true character of our inner selves. Mine. But this is going to be before he can even say mama and dada, or in Abba and, what's the word? Isha? No, Isha is woman. I can't remember. My Hebrew gets thinner every day because I never learned the language. I just learned certain words through preaching when I'm studying to preach sermons or write. You know, I go through some words and I know a bunch of them, but sometimes I forget. For before the child shall have knowledge to cry, my father and my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria. They're going to say before this kid can even talk, the spoil is going to be taken. In 2 years, in 740, the whole nation of Israel to the north will be at war. Egypt will come and fight against Assyria. They will bail out. Hoshea will be ruined because of his alliance with Egypt and Israel against the Assyrians. Assyria will take all the fenced cities, all the frontier. They will besiege Samaria. They'll start besieging the environs of Samaria, what they would call the suburbs, up to a day or 2 days ride out of Assyria. 2 days walk out of Samaria, and the great camps of the Assyrians building up, and they will lay siege officially to Samaria beginning in 736 BC, but the country is being destroyed and eaten up bit by bit until Samaria finally falls in 732. So before the kid's even able to talk, the land of Israel is going to be invaded and they're going to be sucking it dry. It's like grasshoppers coming up on the earth. Remember yesterday the passage we read that they will fill all the holes and fill all the caves and just be squatting in the land like insects, like locusts. The Lord spake also unto me again, saying in verse 5, For as much as this people refuseth the waters of Shiloh that go softly, and rejoice in Rezin, Remaliah's son. You see, when Isaiah made this prophecy, Rezin was the king of Israel, but Hoshea comes after him, and he's the one under whom Samaria falls in 732 BC. For as much as this people refuses the waters of Shiloh that go softly, and rejoice at Rezin, Remaliah's son. The waters of Shiloh. Shiloh means peace. Shiloh was where they first set the tabernacle when Joshua and the children of Israel invaded Canaan and entered into the promised land. They had peace there. They had the rivers of waters. Remember, there is a river that never shall run dry. You know, those rivers of living water. That's what it represented. There in the land of the Lord, God's land. For before the child shall have knowledge to cry, my father, my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria should be taken away before the king of Assyria. Now, Samaria was invaded and conquered first in 740, not Samaria, I'm sorry, Syria. Damascus, Syria was invaded and conquered by the Assyrians in 741, 740 BC. And they used that as their base of operations for their campaign against Israel and eventually their campaign against Judah, which failed because God intervened. We will read that in Isaiah chapters, 37, I think, when we get there. We'll study that closer. My father and my mother, before he can talk, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria. The Lord spake also unto me again, saying, For as much as this people refuseth the waters of Shiloh that go softly, and rejoice in Rezin Remaliah's son. Now, therefore, behold, the Lord, Pekah was his other name. Now, therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria and all his glory. God's going to picture this as a flooded plain, that the flood comes to the edges first, then it gets higher, and then it gets higher. If you've ever been in a flood or seen a flood, you don't know you're in a flood until you're in it. And after a while, you can see it coming, and the river keeps rising. How high is the water, mama? 3 feet high and rising. Will come up like a flood across the land. And that did happen. It happened first in Syria, and then it happened in Israel. But God stopped it in Judah. Now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria, and all his glory. And he shall come over all his channels, and go over all his banks. Here in Ozark, we know that when the river gets up out of his banks, that the park road will be closed, and sometime the bridge will be closed. And there was one time in the flood a few years ago where there was only one way to get north of the river here in Ozark. You had to go south to the South Street, which is Highway 14, and then County Road F over to I-60, over to US 65, and then you get on that and then go across on the high divided highway bridge. You couldn't get over Green Bridge, you couldn't get over the Park Bridge, you couldn't get over the Town Bridge here in Ozark on the main drag. You had to fight your way out to the freeway if you live south of the river, and we do. We just live up from the park on a hill, so our house wasn't flooded, but we had to drive 6-8 miles out of the way to go north to Springfield. And boy, it was something until the floodwaters finally receded several days, and then it would just keep raining. You'd walk out to your car if you got off the asphalt or the concrete. You just bog up to your ankles, and the ground was just soft. You just bogged down in it. It just never quit raining for days and days and days and days and days. That's how a flood comes upon the land, boy. I've seen it happen here. It said that now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria and all his glory, and he shall come up over all his channels and go over all his banks. And he shall pass through Judah, and he shall overflow and go over. He shall reach even to the neck, and the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel. Of course, Emmanuel means God with us. But specifically, he's speaking about the people, his people in this instance. Instead of God with us, it's God is from God's side, saying God with them. Because he will preserve it. So what happens is Assyria will flow out of Israel into Judah, but they'll be stopped there during King Hezekiah's day. But eventually they'll be taken over by the empire of Babylon. And you'll say, well, this prophecy is not true because the Assyrians didn't conquer Jerusalem. They didn't burn the temple. Babylon did. Yes. But if you read your history, you will see that when Babylon and the Medes, remember the Medes, they always switch sides. The Medes were with the Assyrians when they conquered Israel and the capital of Samaria in the northern kingdom of Israel. The Medes were with them then, and then the Medes were with Babylon when they conquered the Assyrians. But what happened was, and that was in like, what was it, 725, 625, 620 BC. What happened was the Assyrians were with them. The Assyrians were with the Babylonians. Now, how did that happen? Well, although Nebuchadnezzar's father, Nebuchadnezzar I, and his armies took Nineveh, the great capital of Assyria, and this was like a civil war for power out of Mesopotamia because Babylon was on the banks of the Euphrates to the south of Nineveh. And then Nineveh was on the Tigris River to the north. They're still there in that fertile crescent of the origin of where civilization started, the land between the two rivers, the great fertile land. Well, when Babylon conquered Nineveh, Nineveh did fall. But then what happened was Babylon just subsumed the Assyrian empire into its own. And so many of Assyria's generals who had fought against Nebuchadnezzar I, they joined him. And then all of these allied kings and princes and warlords, they went with the winning side. And so there was Ragar and Ragmag and a bunch of Assyrian generals that were with Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, and the Babylonian and Chaldean armies that burned Jerusalem, that destroyed Jerusalem, that defeated Judah and took all Judah into captivity. There were Assyrian generals and princes serving in that Babylonian army. And so it's not a false prophecy. The Assyrians did conquer Judah, only they were part of Babylon's army when they did it. Nebuchadnezzar II, the one we know as Nebuchadnezzar the Great, the Nebuchadnezzar of the Bible. So they did fill the breadth of the land, and they did overflow Judah, and they did stretch out their wings, and they did take it. But they did it as servants of Nebuchadnezzar, not servants of the king of Assyria. Well, I tell you what, I hate to do this, but I'm probably going to have to jump off. There's so much here that I want to talk about in so little time. We have to leave in a little bit to go to church. I started a little late, so the program ran a little short, but I have a fine yellow shirt. I look kind of like a canary, a fat canary. Ba-doom. I love all of you. Go to church. If you hung over this morning, sleep it off, go to church tonight. Or if you're brave, go to church anyway. I had a deacon one time when I was still drinking. He says, Jimmy, why do you even try? Because I'd show up for church. I wouldn't say how I was hung over. I was probably still drunk because I hadn't slept long enough to be sober. He said, Jimmy, why do you even try? And I'd say, where else am I going to go? Well, I kept going back. Jesus delivered me. He did it for me. Do it for you. God bless you.